Hey, Melissa here. Just reminiscing and realizing that it was exactly 1 year ago from today when I was in Mount Shasta, California. If you don't know what Mount Shasta is, it's a mountain and is one of the powerful vortexes in the world. It's the root chakra of the world. So there's different spots in the world that represent the different chakras. And it was my second time there, and each time I go, it's a different experience and a different potent experience. I was there with one of my star sisters, my soul friends, and just obviously a lot of realizations and unraveling, clearing of distortions. As more distortions were being cleared, once I left Shasta, I went north to British Columbia, Canada to visit my in-laws with my husband, and I had this realization. And even during my time in Shasta that week, I was not being drawn to eat meat. And I grew up with the SAD diet, the standard American diet, and and I've tried different things like keto and whatever else, whatever the trends were. And I did try to be plant-based. I believe it was in 2020. And I did it for about 9 months. And what I didn't like was that I was eating a lot more like carbs, like grains and pastas. And I normally would eat before what I thought was clean was like a protein, like a meat and a veg or a salad. And that's generally how I ate. But I definitely loved my cheese and sauces, and I loved going out to restaurants to eat so much. Flavors and all of that. And so I stopped the whole plant-based thing back in 2020 because I just didn't like eating all the carbs, and I didn't know of any other way until someone online, thank you internet, it was like a reel that someone I know posted in her story, and then I followed that and I saw that this girl was eating fruit based, and I've heard of raw before, like eating raw, but I've never heard of fruit based or people who are fruitarians or eating fruit based. And I was like so blown away that this is even an option. I'm like, people eat mostly fruit? What? Hang on, what? I'm like, I've never heard about this. It never came into my field, and they're plant based, they don't eat meat. And I looked at a few different people. I started going down the rabbit hole because once I start going, I go down and I want to know everything and get really curious. And I'm like, how do I not know this corner of the world? And was finding people who were like strong and fit and had beautiful bodies and seemed vibrant and healthy and ate fruit based, and some of them mostly just fruit, like 95% fruit. And I was like, how is this possible? How do I not know what this is? And so I immediately, when I was in British Columbia, I got the book by Dr. Doug Graham called 80-10-10. And I just devoured it while I was there visiting my in-laws and was completely mind blown that this is an option, eating fruit-based, raw. All of my questions came up, which are normal, like all of my programming of like, but where do you get your protein and all the things. And I remember listening to the book. I had it on Audible and was like, this seems so extreme, like so radical, like whoa. But yet there was a part of me that was so curious and felt like just really pulled. And I was like, I need to try this. And it made a lot of logical sense to me, even though my conditioning was coming up against me like, well, what about all the things that society and experts have told you about? But it made sense to me. And it was like, oh, a solution to eating in a way where I don't have to eat animals and can still eat clean. In fact, this, from my rabbit holes, like this is actually what our body thrives on, is from the sugar from fruits. It's our actual like clean fuel. And so I started that week at my in-laws, which when we're there, we eat like a lot of things are revolved around food, They love to eat very deliciously. And I was like, halfway through the week, I'm like, I'm just gonna be eating eating fruit for the rest of my time here. And I just, just shared that I was preparing for a retreat, which I was going on a retreat right after that. But I didn't really have all the answers and felt confident to explain what I was doing, because to get like pushback of like, that's dangerous or that's that. And I was like, I don't know enough yet. But I know that my intuition is strong, and it was guiding me to go down this path and try it for myself. And so I was drinking coffee at the time. Coffee lover, loved coffee, loved everything about it, loved the nostalgia tied to it. My whole family drinks coffee, the smell, the ritual, everything about it. I just loved it. And then I quit right there. Had a headache for days. And then I quit the dairy, I quit the meat, everything. And usually when I'm at my in-laws, I tend to like the snacks and all the things for comfort. Chips, and I love chips, loved chips. And so I just went cold turkey and was still eating like salads and veggies, and I did have a grilled sweet potato here and there throughout the week, because it is quite the change to go from eating dense foods like cooked foods to then eating raw and fruit based. So it is a transition. But I was just so hungry for it, of trying this out for myself, and continued on when I went back to the other part of Canada to visit my family. Stayed there for the summer, and I was doing the fruit based thing, and I felt amazing. At first, I did hit quite a low at first because I was removing all these stimulants. Like I had a headache for a few days from the caffeine. I removed everything, oils, salts, anything like that, anything that's processed. And I felt like I hit a really, really low for a week, like really low, because all the stimulants were removed. And then I was like guided intuitively to eat just watermelon for 5 days. And so I did. And it was watermelon season in the summer, so there's plenty of it. And we were invited to a friend's house, to the cottage for the weekend, like by the lake. And I was like, I know I still have my training wheels on, and I'm still adjusting to this lifestyle. And you know what? I'm going to do this 5-day watermelon thing over the weekend while we're there, because I'm going to be tempted probably by all of the food that they're barbecuing and cooking and socializing. It's like, yeah, this feels like the right thing to do. So we packed the car, and I think I packed like 4 or 5 watermelons in the trunk. And I was like, yeah, I'm just eating watermelon for the weekend. And they kind of looked at me funny and were like, why? And I really didn't have much to say about it, but just that this is what my intuition has guided me to do, and I'm just curious about it, and I'm following that. I don't know if this is going to be forever, but I want to try it, and what else can they say or do? And so they were making their food, and I cut up my watermelon and I ate it, and there we go. But after that 5 days, I felt so good and realized that, wow, we as a species, as a human species, eat way more than we need to. We eat way more than we need to. I felt so light and so good, and it helped to just like cleanse and clear my palate of the different, like, how you can get used to certain flavors and the stimulation and the hit from like flavors and salts and things like that. So it was a great like reset. My body felt so good. And then I brought different fruits back in, and some raw foods, raw veggies and things like that. So I was getting creative and exploring the raw world, and just dove into a ton of different books and podcasts, and really hungry for this knowledge. And fantastic. There was a lot of deprogramming that had to happen, and I'll touch more on this on other videos. But fast forward, I did have some cooked food at some points throughout the year because I was traveling a lot. And again, this is very new, and some people don't transition to like being plant-based, and then never mind, you can be plant-based, but then going to raw is a whole other shift. And then fruit-based, so it's quite the jump. Some people take years of being just vegan and then slowly transitioning to raw, like gourmet raw with like high fats with like nuts and avocados, and then start to let go of the fats and shift more to fruits. So I kind of jumped into it like all in, like fully in to the deep end, and then had really a lot of life happen to me in the end of the year, beginning of the following, so beginning of this year. And I do live in Costa Rica. It's a really hot climate and it's beautiful. I have access to amazing fruits. And I flew back to Canada in January in the winter, and it was cold. And being someone who is eating fruit-based, raw plant-based, it was like a shock, and it was like one of the coldest winters, and I was definitely craving warmer foods. I didn't really know how to handle it. And also, I was an emotional eater, and I was going through a big upheaval in my personal life. And I was still plant-based, but I was starting to eat like lentil pasta with these vegan like cream cheeses. And so I noticed I was starting to, like, within the parameters, but starting to eat a little bit more heavier foods and more cooked foods, because it was soothing, and offering myself grace with that. And so I'll leave it here because I want to keep these shorter. But all in all, it's to say, a year later, I'm here and I'm re-inspired by it. I lost inspiration the last couple of months, and I did go back to drinking matcha in about mid-February. My mom came to visit me here in Costa Rica, and she took me out for a birthday matcha, and I was like, ooh, got a little taste of the caffeine, and I just had another one here, another one there, and it kind of spiraled. And then next thing you know, I'm back on the matcha, the caffeine addiction. And so I've quit caffeine again a month ago. And also within that 2-month period there, again, I was still like unraveling everything that happened in the beginning of the year. I went back to eating cheese. Not to blame it on my mom, but she came down, like I told you, and she bought all this cheese that she thought she was going to eat, and then she ends up leaving after her time here and leaves all the cheese in the fridge. And I'm like sitting there with all this cheese in the fridge. I was rooming with my friend at the time, and I was like, eat it, girlfriend. Like, and she wasn't really eating it. It's just sitting there, and I'm like, oh, you're leaving the crack for the former crack addict. Basically, cheese is like, it's such a like drug. And I loved cheese. And so I had a moment where I was like, oh, I'm going to eat the cheese. And my friend was out of town, like out for the day, and I ate the cheese. And she comes back home and she sits down. I look at her, I said, I gotta tell you something. I did something bad. She's like, her face was like, oh my God, what did you do? You know, like, it could be anything, Melissa. What did you do? And I was like, I ate cheese. And she just died laughing, as if it's like, oh my gosh, like, that's what you did? I'm like, yeah, but in my world, like, that's a big deal. Like, you know. And so rather than being super hard on myself, I was like, you know what? I'm like, I got some olives here, I got some jam, I got some gluten-free crackers, pulled out whatever cheese was there, and we ate it together, and we had a nice time. And I kept eating cheese for the next 2 months, and it started to weigh on me. I'm like, this is not feeling right. My intuition kept nudging, being like, what are you doing? I was starting to feel heavier and heavier, and like energetically, and my body was changing again. I wasn't in the body that I was like loving before that. And so it was affecting me. And then last month I got the nudge, quit the matcha, the caffeine, quit the dairy, and come back. And so the last month I've been back and just recalibrating again and re-inspiring myself. And so I said I wanted to keep this short, so I'll wrap that up here, but this is in a nutshell, but I'll speak more about this in other videos because it's a topic that has really caught my attention. And to me personally, it feels like I've been somebody who's been a seeker since 19. I'm in my late 30s now and questioning politics, government, religion, everything, big pharma. And I felt like when I discovered this, it came into my field last year, this fruit-based raw eating, I felt like it was another piece of the puzzle. I'm like another thing another distortion, this whole eating thing. And man, I had to also grieve a lot. Like, it wasn't easy, like grieving going out to eat at restaurants and grieving how much socially we put food in the center of our interactions. Not that you can't do that, but it's the kinds of foods, like going out to dinners and restaurants and making, like, just putting all these stimulants inside the food and animals and things like that. And I was like, man, this can feel like a lonely path for a little bit, until I started to, through the internet, finding different pockets of communities and different people speaking on this topic, and just really solidifying my own experience, direct experience with eating this way. And yeah, I'm coming from curiosity. I don't know what the ultimate truth is, but I know this is piquing my attention, and I'm exploring it, and I want to share my journey with you around this, as well as other things. So, okay, that's it for this one. See you soon.